Welcome back to the unofficial Squarespace Entrepreneur Podcast. My name is Omari Harabin, and if this is your first time listening, this show is all about building a business on Squarespace. So I'm here with Will Myers, who I've had Will on the show before. I've had the pleasure of meeting you
Yep.
twice now at Circle Day 1 and 2, and it's been
Mm-hmm.
it's been a good time both times. I don't think we really got a chance to really catch up this past Circle Day though. But I do
Mm.
follow your Instagram, which the thing I like about following your Instagram stories is you always have some type of like conversational thing going on. Um, and the thing that got my
Mm.
attention most recently is when you were talking about AI, and some of what Squarespace has previewed in the AI arena. So I wanted to invite you on because obviously I value your perspective and so on. And I thought it would be an interesting conversation for our listeners, just to get some different perspectives on what this could mean, what some of these changes or shifts mean for designers and developers, and perhaps how we can prepare or, get ready for some of these inevitable changes in the way design works.
Yep. Yeah, they're coming. And I am absolutely no expert in any of this at all. And I don't think really anyone is. AI is so new, but I just wanted to kind of just start the conversation around it all because I feel like there's a lot of I don't know if it's like nervousness or people being scared or just like an exhaustion with the pace that technology's moving. But us as web designers, there's just a lot of change going on, and just more voices that are talking about it, I think, is helpful.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not an expert on it either. I just love. I'm a hobbyist and I'm fascinated by it. And
Right.
um and you asked me when I hit you up to come on the show, or I don't know what you asked, but I was like, I'm tired of AI right now. Um, and
Yeah.
I'm kind of just waiting until the next season, before I, jump back in or anything. But what has your
Right.
experience been, let's say since 2023 with Chat GPT coming on the scene? What's your experience been? How
Yeah.
have you used it? How has it been valuable to you?
It's kind of mind-boggling that ChatGPT came out like this year, or it just became into it entered into the zeitgeist, as they say, in like earlier this year. It feels like it's been so impactful already. I feel like we've been using it for a very long time.
Yeah.
Um, but I've used it mostly just in my coding world. It's been very, very helpful to ask coding questions, specific questions, niche questions in my industry about how do you code this specific thing? How do you build this technical thing? It's been very helpful with that. But one thing I have really noticed with all of the AI tools, whether I'm using it for coding, which is predominantly what I do, or whether I'm using it for image generation or text generation, very rarely, almost never, does it give me the exact thing I need. I have to use my knowledge to sort of take what it gives me, because it gives me a starting point, and tweak it and move it and turn it into the thing that either I need or my client needs. Um, and I, again, not sure what that means, but that's just been my experience with it. And honestly, I'd turn that question back on you. Like, how have you been using it as well? Because you're a lot more, you do a lot of stuff in the arts as well, outside of specifically just website stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So the thing that initially got me excited was coding as well.
Mm,
I started the year with an intention that I was finally gonna like break through module number 2 of the next coding course that I took, right? Like,
nice.
I
Yeah.
always got stuck with the part on just setting up the environment, just all of the like
Oh yeah.
the little tricky
Oh
things that you
yeah.
end up having to go to Stack Exchange or Stack Overflow or whatever it's called. Um,
Absolutely.
I just got
Yeah.
stuck. I would just get stuck over and over again for the past like almost 2 decades. And so I made up my mind. And at the same time that I made up my mind that I was going to do this, um, there was a course that I had already like, had on deck. and I was going through the first module, setting up my Ruby environment, and I realized, oh, I can ask ChatGPT how to do this.
Mm.
And as soon as I like had that little mini breakthrough, it was like it was over. Like I spent the next
Yeah.
3 months like creating like
Yep.
Chrome extensions, chatbots, a whole bunch of stuff. Like I have a whole list of projects that I worked on the first quarter and a half of the year that I don't even remember. Um, like that I have to get back to at some point just to like maintain them. But that
Yeah,
was
you gotta share them with us all. I mean, I use your chat bot. I haven't tried any of these others though. I'd love to see what the others are.
yeah, I'll line them up. I was moving really quickly, obviously, because it's like
I'm sure.
something
Sounds
that
like
you
it.
something that you want to do for a long time, and then when you can finally do it, it's kind of like off to the races. So
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
one thing. The other thing was I started taking like old transcripts from YouTube videos or talks that I had given and transcribing them, and then basically like reworking them using ChatGPT. So simple
Mm,
stuff like grammar fixes, and then using it for like editorial kind of feedback. So I like to use Playground. OpenAI has like a Playground feature where you kind
mm.
of have a little bit more flexibility in
Yep.
terms of how you
Yep.
construct the prompt and so on. So that's where I spend most of my time nowadays, especially. So there's that. There's the writing part. There's the code.
Hmm.
I haven't gotten around to any of the visual stuff, just like really light dabbling. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I
that's
used
pretty much it.
Midjourney the other day. I used Midjourney the other day for some image generation.
How was that?
And
Oh, you need it?
it's pretty impressive. It is very impressive. I was creating a plugin, and when you create plugins, it's that 80-20 rule. Like 20% of the work is actually creating the plugin. The other 80% is building the demo pages and setting up your product page and all that stuff. And I was doing that. I was building the demo page. And I just went to Midjourney to create some images for what I needed. And it created beautiful imagery, just really good stuff. I just gave it some prompts, and I actually went to Chat GPT to say, give me 8 examples of blog posts.
Hmm.
And then it gave me the 8 examples of blog posts. And then it told me, here's a prompt you can use for a thumbnail image. And so I just took that prompt from Chat GPT, put it into Midjourney, and it created these awesome images that I use for the thumbnails. I gotta say, really, really impressed with it. And again, my use case was creating demo content. This was not content I wanted to push live on my own website or give to a client and have them push live. I might feel differently about that. But for creating demo content, maybe you're like a template designer, I think this is an excellent tool for creating that type of stuff.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Definitely, like as a solopreneur, or a small team, it's like that
Mm-hmm.
that instant assistant that just kind of you can go to with those quick
Right.
tasks that are, you can't Google it, but you can definitely like this morning, I chat GPT. That was like, or I don't even like to use that as a verb, but anyway, I
That's weird.
I asked G. That's how I think about it. I asked
Ask
G.
G.
Yeah, I said, "Yo, G, I'm
There we go.
celebrating I'm celebrating 17,000 customers, like a milestone. Like, what should I do to celebrate?"
Yeah.
And it's nothing that I didn't already think of, but in
Mhm.
the absence of having an intern or someone else in the room who I could say, "Hey, what should I do?" It's a
Yeah.
good quick I don't want
It
to say
is.
replacement, but
Yeah, no, and I know what you mean. It's a good starting point. I mean, it's not it's these machines. I personally have the viewpoint that it's never going to replace a human. It's not going to replace like what we get out of physical human interaction. But there's so many people that, like us small business owners, if we're working for ourselves, we don't have that already. So like this is a minimum viable product of something that is useful to us right now. And I think that's okay. I think that's fine to be able to use that kind of as like a I don't know, a bounce board, an ideas board to just throw things against and say, hey, what do you think about this? What are some thoughts? And a lot of times, to be honest, I
Yep.
asked it earlier, like an hour ago. I was like, what would be some good questions? I sort of gave it the prompt of what we're talking about today. What would be some good questions to ask Omari here? And it didn't come back with good stuff, like nothing good. I was like, okay, well, that's not going to be helpful. So it's, I mean, it's not perfect, but it is often I've found it to be a really good starting point with a lot of these things.
Yeah, it's made me appreciate myself more. Like my
Mm-hmm.
humanity, my edge, my
Yeah.
touch, my
Yeah.
imperfections. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's not like you can't get away with cheat. Like you can't cheat. There's no cheated. It's
No.
like I think I might have tried early on. I might have said, okay, what can I do? And I quickly was like,
Right.
no, this can't do you. Like this can't do what you do.
Right,
uh,
100%. Like we've all tried to be like, oh wow, Chat GPT, especially like back in March when it first came out and when we were first playing around with it. We're like, oh, can you write me a newsletter? Write
yeah,
me an
yeah,
email for this. And you're like, oh wow, this is pretty horrible. But once you finally learn to wield it, like, okay, give me some things someone might be interested about this. And then I take that and put my humanity behind it, put my experiences, my personal experiences, put my thoughts behind it. That's how I feel like it can give people superpowers. And
yeah,
superpowers is not the right word. Super efficiencies, I think, is a better word.
yeah, for sure, for sure. I'm glad you asked for some questions, and I guess I'm not as glad that they weren't good ones.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I wish they were a little bit better. But I mean, recently, I think one of the reasons you reached out to me initially was because Squarespace released this demo video about where they wanted to be taking their platform, like where they're going. And I don't know if you do show notes or something, and we could link it in the show notes. But it's on YouTube, so it's public video, and it was very heavy in AI, like a lot of AI doing sort of text generation, a lot of AI with image stuff, a lot of AI with some layout stuff. What are your thoughts on AI and its role with web designers and specifically within Squarespace? Do
Yeah,
you see AI as sort of taking over the job of web designers?
no, I think it's going to make web designers more in tune with what their job really is, which is
Mm,
interpreting their clients' needs and creating something that is going to meet that. Um, and I think it's easy to like get lost in the whole, what we do as
yeah.
designers. But yeah, I think at the heart of it, it's like here's another tool. I I don't necessarily like the AI doing it for you aspect, um, because I think, eh, okay, let me rewind my thoughts.
Sure.
I don't think it's
Your
much,
podcast.
I don't think it's much different than templates. And when I say that, I mean,
Yeah. Yep.
it's just another starting point, but it's a dynamic starting point. So whereas a template is static, what I saw in this demonstration via the Squarespace AI demo was a dynamic template where you're
Mm,
informing the AI, what your specific needs are, and the AI is coming up with something that is kind of, best suited to those needs, and then from there you can get to work. I think
right.
the scary part is if no one gets to work on that. That's the part that's like,
Yeah.
ah. But
Yeah.
just like templates, you know, you trust that a do-it-yourself customer is going to say, all right, thank you for the starting point. I'll do the rest myself. Now, mind you, I see Squarespace sites all the time that have the landscape stock imagery.
Yeah. Yeah. They haven't changed that. So it's not that people aren't going to do that. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
but then they
Right.
suffer
But
the consequences. So it's, uh,
correct.
yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah. No, I've kind of come to the same place. I mean, I think that's a really great viewpoint on it. Is like it's just like a more dynamic template. That makes a ton of sense to me because that's honestly kind of what we've been saying with the text generation and the code generation and the image generation. These are just starting points. These are just starting points. And they're not, if you just send it out, everyone's going to look at this and say, oh, wow, okay, so you just had some AI write this for you. But you can use that as a starting point to put your own experiences, your own business, your own products, your own humanity into it and turn it into something more. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I like that. That's good.
and remembering that our role, is to translate something for someone who doesn't speak the language of the web. Um,
Right. Right. And that goes back to your earlier point, which is like what is our role as web designers? And you're saying our role as web designers is not okay, we can use Squarespace, we can use Wix, we can use WordPress. It's not our ability to use a tool, it's our ability to have a conversation with our client and help them understand how to put these things together in a way that people resonate with
for,
online.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think the closer you get to that, and the more comfortable you get with new tools, the better off. My take with
Mm,
tools though is like, I sometimes I like to be an early adopter, and then other times I like to be a late adopter.
mm.
And I think there are pros and cons to both, but I don't think people often appreciate the pros to being a late adopter. Uh,
Give me some examples.
so like with a lot of Squarespace's release over the past few years, I've just taken the late adopter route where I'm like, you know what?
Mm,
I know what the beginning is going to be like.
mm.
I know there's good. I know there's going to be some challenges and some frustrations and some things that have to get resolved. And
Right.
when they get resolved, I'll jump
Use
in
it.
and use
Right.
um
Right.
and just share what I get from that point. I think once upon a time I had a real eagerness to like just be first, so you can like be the first
Yeah.
reporter on the scene, which is fun.
Hmm.
I still do
Sure.
that, but then I found that there's a good balance when you're also like the last one on the scene. There's like you don't get hurt
Right.
as much, you don't suffer all of the consequences of being first.
Right. And I think that also comes with your just like experience as well though. It's like you've been in this industry long enough to know that like what makes or breaks an online business is not whether they're using the latest and greatest technology. It's like how they are presenting themselves in the market, how they are what are their products. Like it's these higher order things rather than strictly technology that make or break someone's business.
Yeah, now you're preaching my language right here.
There
Um,
we go. There we go. Yeah.
yeah, because I've been thinking about that as well. It's like, um, yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot.
Well,
Um,
what are some any big thoughts you could share with us?
yeah, like,
Or stuff you're just sort of processing still and just questions you have, either one.
yeah, so like my example of that is like I find, and I was sharing this a couple days ago on the last episode, that there's a lot of parts of my business that are just really under optimized, or
Hmm.
um I'm not doing all of those tactical things that I'm aware of, or that I could do. Um, but it still hums along, and it hums along, like you
Mm-hmm.
say, because of those higher order things. And so it's made me appreciate the being able to uh, succeed in spite of your own mediocrity. Um, is a
Yeah,
is
I
a
like
is a
that.
is a gift, because
Mm-hmm.
as you go through your mediocrity, you're usually putting a lot of like pressure on yourself. Oh, this could be better, this could be that, make this better.
Right.
But when okay is still okay,
Yep.
it lets you know, like, well, what's actually true here, like what's actually meaningful. And I'll give you another example. Like we've got a photography studio, and we kind of stripped it back, and made it really bare and minimal, where a few months ago we had like a lot of artwork there and just like a really vibey experience. Now we have
Mm.
something really stripped back and minimal, and when photographers rent the space, my wife's first instinct was like, oh, but we don't have this up or we don't have that up. And I'm like, babe,
Mm,
this guy had his dream photo shoot today. This was his first time renting a space. This was he enjoyed himself. He got exactly what he needed. In fact, he got more than what he needed. And so
yep.
I say that to say that like it's about the person on the other side. So
Yeah.
we might judge
Yeah.
ourselves very harshly for what we do or how we do it. But if it's helping someone on the other side, they're not looking at it the same way that you're looking at it. They're not making the same judgments you're making. They're just getting the value that they need and going on about their business. Um,
100%.
so it comes down to value. That's the high principle.
Right. Right. It does. It comes down to the value. And honestly, you just that story reminded me, it brought me back to when we first started selling websites and stuff. Because we would always I think it was just a lack of confidence, but we would always like promise the world when we were
Mhm,
talking to clients. We'd promise, all the websites, and we'd figure out your custom imagery, and we'd do all this copy. And and I don't know, it was just we we were promising stuff that we couldn't really necessarily that the client didn't necessarily need. The
mhm.
client wasn't necessarily asking for this. We were doing that just because it made us feel better about what we were offering. Um, and I just feel like that's a trap a lot of new young entrepreneurs enter into, is just, I don't know, overbuilding their product and to something the market's not necessarily looking for. And what that means in practice is you're putting energy into things your customer doesn't need. Like, your customer wants more of you. It doesn't want
Mhm,
more of these things. It often wants just more of you, your thoughts, your
mhm.
your your ideas, rather than these things, these tactical things you're delivering on.
Yeah. So I want to get your perspective on this as well. Like, um, because man, I just lost my train of thought.
No worries.
Um,
No worries. I
but
had
yeah,
a
I'll let you
question. I
keep going. Yeah,
mean,
go ahead.
I had a question I kind of wanted to bring up back at, I mean, you were talking about all these things that the what's the word? You said late, so sort of you were the late adopter, a late
Yeah.
adopter technologies. I'm not sure if this is something you want to talk about on here, but I just read your email today about transitioning to 7.1 from 7.0.
Oh
What
yeah,
was
I should have
what
said
was
that.
that like? Yeah, I feel like that's a perfect example of late adoption there.
So last night I was like, is this even public yet? Let me go check because I don't even know. I haven't been
Right.
keeping up with the thing. But I saw the ability to preview it and I previewed and I was like, okay, cool. It's here. And I did a
Mhm.
double check in my Facebook group just to get some other, opinions from people who've already done it. Um, and
Right.
and then I was like, okay, so now I have to like schedule a change control with Dimitri so that we can do this overnight and uh
Mhm.
make a seamless transition because we got to
Right.
update some code as well. And I just got excited because I had kind of just been, 7.1 has been out since like 2019. And I was,
Right. Right.
it kind of for a while I was feeling like, man, like are people gonna think that like this is not like a legitimate Squarespace business because we're not on 7.1 and that's the
Oh, yeah.
default offering. Um,
Mhm.
so I thought that for a couple years, and then I was like, oh wait, it doesn't matter as much as I
But
thought.
yeah,
And that,
back to
yep,
the, I think this is a great example of the higher order things. That's not what people care about. They care about your marketing and, like, do you have a good product?
yeah. So I found that there's a balance, and this is where I lost my train of thought. So the balance is like you've got to do some things for yourself to feel good about what you're doing.
Mhm.
But how the person you're serving feels is what's most important, right? So
Mm.
like and how they feel is still dependent on how you feel, right? So like if you're not confident,
Correct.
they can't be confident in you. So there's a part
Right.
of it where it's like you overcompensate for the sake of your own confidence, but when it's unnecessary, it then there's like diminishing returns. Now, what I wanted to ask you
Right.
was, because I haven't been able to ask anyone this yet. How
Okay.
how much of that do you think comes from just the traditional academic experience of turning in projects and papers and assignments and
Hmm.
doing work for teachers or professors, where the work that you're submitting is at the end of the day like not really important, but you've been told you got to do
Right. It's
stuff.
for a grade,
Yeah.
not a paycheck. Right.
I've been wondering to myself like how much of my like academic conditioning have I had to decondition as an entrepreneur, as it relates
Oh
to
man.
submitting work.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, this is like a whole huge other discussion. And these are just, I don't know, these are just my off the cuff responses. Um my background, so I got a dual master's degree. I got an MBA and an industrial and systems engineering master's degree. And I loved that I got those. I got to do some great stuff. I'm not using either one of those. MBA does not teach you how to start or run a business in the slightest. It teaches you the exact opposite, actually, like the later stages of a business, how to manage, how to maintain one. Um, and I do feel like that was, and it's always hard, looking back in your own history and saying, oh, this was the wrong thing for me. You never know what lessons it taught you. But I do have a hard time justifying the time and expense that went into those degrees based on where I am today and my happiness with my own current career and my career direct trajectory. Um, so I am someone who thinks um, we over index on post high school education. I think we probably put too much emphasis on that and less emphasis on practical real world stuff. And again, this is coming from me and my own experience, but I didn't start to feel comfortable and confident in my own skills, my own ability until I started doing stuff out in the world and giving it to clients, them voluntarily paying me for the work that I created. That was the learning mechanism that really helped me understand how things work and how the world works. So I don't know. That was kind of a rambly thought there, but that's kind of my thought on it.
Yeah,
What
no,
about you?
I
What about
picked it
you?
up. Well, I'm not that far away from you, man. I was gonna say, how do you feel holding that opinion, having a dual masters? Do you feel like it kind of like how do you feel knowing like, well, I've done this thing and I don't really think I needed to have done this to learn what I do now. Like,
Well, I'm also someone who I'm never going to give my past self a hard time, like about anything. Like
yeah,
I met my wife getting my master's degree. So I mean, how
there
could
you
I
go.
how could I say this was a bad decision? I mean, life has a way of just like unfolding in the way that it unfolds. And I don't feel like giving yourself a hard time about any decision you made is a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm talking about my master's degree, but we can also talk about college degrees. So this is 6 years of my life. We're upwards of six figures in revenue, and I'm trying to think like today as a business owner, if I was to invest, multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in 6 years, like would I be able to get a better return on that time and money today than I did during for college? And I think the answer for me is an absolute yes. It's yeah, it would have been better invested. And again, now I'm talking about, very that we're in a very capitalistic mindset here. So take it all with a grain of salt in your own worldview
Mhm.
there. But yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I
We'll
mean,
stop there.
I had a similar experience. The thing that my saving grace, and I love what you said about like never giving your past self a hard time. Like that's
Mm.
that's worthy of like putting on the wall. Um,
Yeah.
for real. Just even your past self yesterday. So
Right. Right.
so my saving grace throughout school, like my earliest school years all the way till the end, was whenever there was an opportunity for some type of project where you can choose what you wanted to do, I chose what I
Mm.
wanted to do, and
Yep.
I always did well in that. I might not have like turned in the homework for the thing I didn't care about, but for the project that I got to choose, I always like excelled, top of the class. Um,
Right.
but those opportunities weren't, those weren't always there. But in grad school, I went and I got my master's in marketing and technology innovation. And my
There we
rationale,
go.
another one of those little long, those long.
Hmm.
So my rationale was I wanted to get my MBA right after and kind of do like the similar kind of program. It sounds like you did. That was what
Hmm.
kind of what I wanted, but really, um, I was just looking for a way that I can reconcile my outside interest, which was music, and figure out, well, how can I like take that interest that I have in music and learn something in school that I could apply to it. Now I was going to an engineering school
Mm.
for my undergrad. So I'm doing engineering, but I'm in my room in my dorm making beats all day,
Making
tr-
music. There we
trying to
go.
be trying
Nice.
to be Kanye West. And I was always just trying to like figure out how can I make this thing that I'm doing that I have to do help me with the thing that I want to do. Um, and
Mm.
and that's largely been my philosophy since since leaving corporate America, and then even now raising my son. It's like let's lead with our interests, and if we can turn our
Yeah.
interests into assets, then we've succeeded in the capitalist game, but we've also succeeded in our personal game of being true to who we are and what we really enjoy.
Yeah. 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 I think that that is absolutely the sweet spot when you can find a career, when you can provide for yourself, when you can provide for your family, as well as be doing something that you love. And it's not like you wake up every day just like bright eyed and bushy tailed, but generally you wake up happy about going to work. And that's the goal. That's the dream.
Yeah. And I want to offer this that lately I've felt like I am like coming up out of the ground in a sense. And
Mm-hmm.
as a parent, you're not there yet, but when you get there, you might have these same kind of questions to yourself. It's like one of the things you try to do is like, how do I, you've gone through some struggles in your life, and you obviously don't want your children to have to go through the same thing
Mm-hmm.
or the same struggles, but you do understand that there's value in struggle. And so you do want them to
Yeah.
experience some, but obviously it's not going to be the same, but it has to still be constructed in some kind of way. And so as a marketer or in this like online business world, I felt a similar kind of thing where you're supposed to sell the easy thing. Like you're supposed to sell like
Yeah.
not having the challenge anymore. Um,
Yep.
and what I found to be more true to me is that no, you want to put some of that back in there. You want to
Yeah. You
tell
do.
tell the client the truth about how challenging this is really going to be, or what it's really going to take, or what they actually
Yeah.
don't like. The truth is hard,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's rewarding in the sense that there's nothing like that you have to hide from after the truth. Um,
That
and
I like that.
so I've been kind of emerging in my own truth, um, and coming to that realization that the things that I want to offer and provide, like there has to be a lot of truth in that. And the big part of the truth is like you're gonna struggle.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
you're gonna go through uncomfortable things and situations and uncomfortable conversations and moments and all of those things.
Yeah.
But those
Yep.
things are designed for your own growth. And if we were to rob you of those challenges, then you wouldn't grow. You'd just be sitting around spinning in circles. And I hope you're not sitting around spinning in circles.
No, I don't want that,
Not you, but like
but
anyone else.
right, no, for sure, right. Anyone listening, right? We don't want that for you, but we also don't not want that. I mean, you need that experience is crucial, and I think
Yeah.
like you were talking about with your son. I mean, you don't want to rob him of those experiences, but you also want him to know he's got a safe, loving place to always fall back on whenever when those troubling times come. And maybe this might not be the relationship you want to make with your client as well as, but that's kind of a general idea. That's like a good thing, is like, listen, this process of building a website, of like explaining what your business is and putting it out in the world, and sort of really drilling down to what your products are, it can be a painful experience. Like, there's a lot of decisions and trade-offs you have to make, and it can be a bit tough, but like, listen, we're here, we'll talk about it, we'll work through it. Like, we're gonna make it through. And I think that that's a good kind of mindset, I guess, to have when you're working with people.
Yeah, for sure. And I told my wife this yesterday. We celebrated our anniversary last week. I think
Oh,
it's,
congrats.
thank you, 11 years marriage.
Oof.
And
Here we
like,
go.
was it 12 years of relation? Yeah, 12 years. So we often go back to like our first moments and so on. I don't know. I guess I don't know how many other couples do this, but
I like that. Yeah.
each time we go back, we kind of unpack something a little bit different that we hadn't revealed to each other at the time or along the way in these 10 years.
Mm.
And one of the things that I realized was true for both of us when we met was we had made this decision. We had made a commitment to ourselves before, not too long before we met, that we would be honest and we'd be truthful with whatever partner
Mm.
we engage with next. And that was true for me, but I didn't know that it was true for her until recently. And when she shared that with me, she was like, "Yeah, I just didn't want to like steal your thunder and make you think like I was copying you." um, but I, I've thought about that in relationship to my business, because if you're in business, you're
Mm.
you're you're married to your business. It's something that
Yep.
feeds you, provide you have a relationship with it. I see business as um a measure of our ability to scale a certain type of relationship, where there's obviously a
Mm.
transaction involved, but a certain type of relationship. And so, like, for example, crossing this milestone of 17,000 Squarespace users with our plugins was like that's a scaled customization relationship, you know where on a one-to-one level, hey, we can, customize this thing, but how do we create a business by scaling that direct, hey, I can customize, tweak your template relationship? Um,
Yeah.
Now that I'm going into the coaching side of my business, I'm thinking, okay, well, similarly, what kind of relationship am I scaling there? What am I committing to that I want to scale and have more of? And so it's
Mm.
it's forced me to go back to those places of commitment and truth and honesty. And I guess these values mean something more to me now that I see how they play out over time and how they play out in all of our relationships, but particularly in client facing relationships where
Yeah.
you're dealing with different personalities, different worldviews, um, all sorts of differences, and you're trying to get on the same page around one common goal. And naturally, there's going to be conflict there. And speaking as
Yep.
someone who likes to avoid conflict, um, avoiding that conflict in that scenario creates more conflict for yourself, you know,
Yep. Creates worse conflict down
worse,
the
yeah,
road, for
down the
sure.
road.
For sure.
So
And yeah.
whatever steps need to be taken to get in front of that, right? And the getting in front of it, to me, that's what you do by yourself. It's the commitments you make to yourself when there's no one watching, that you say, this is who I am, or this is what I'm gonna do when this situation arises. So that
And holding yourself accountable to it, right? To
when it
doing that, right?
arises, you're there. You've already accepted that as being like what it is.
I really like that. That's a really good framing. I haven't ever thought about necessarily client work and business like that. I think that's worth repeating. You said I see business as a way to scale a certain type of relationship.
Yep. And you
Uh,
get to decide what that type of relationship is.
right, right.
Uh,
Yeah, it's up to you. You're the business owner, of course. And also there's the that idea that conflict comes in and you can't avoid it. I mean, you or avoiding it isn't solving a problem for you or for your client. And I think that's honestly, we're getting into really philosophical stuff here. But
that's the real
I
reason I've
think
invited you.
that's the real reason. I love it. I love philosophical stuff. I'm down for it. And that's I think there's this myth that we want to avoid conflict in relationships, and conflict is actually healthy. It's not comfortable, but it's incredibly healthy. And I feel like you really need it, especially in a business, because you need other people pushing back on your thoughts and your ideas. Your business is independent of you as a person. Um, and it just needs to show up in the world a different way.
Yeah.
And conflict is the only way for you to get there.
And
Healthy
and
conflict. We'll say
yeah,
healthy conflict.
and I'll dig into the conflict real quick. Is the conflict is usually just some type of misunderstanding, right? There's a
Mm,
particular way that you see things, or a particular way that you understand or approach things, and it's not always going to line up with the person in front of you. And when that happens, there's a tendency to think either something is wrong with them, or there's some type of
mm,
they fit the label or category of some type of bad person, um, when they're just having a different experience in the moment and need your help to bring them
yeah.
into a common understanding. Like
Yeah.
I have a I have a customer right now, who's been struggling for some time, and he hit me with a one of those emails. I'm frustrated,
Mm,
and I
mhm,
had it I had been kind of tuned out of these emails. So when I looked and looked at his frustration, it was one of those things where it's like, okay, this customer actually needed the information delivered a different way. He probably needed it more visual,
right.
or he probably needed something. And if he doesn't get that, he gets frustrated. And when people are frustrated, we often don't get the best parts of their personality. And when we don't get the best
Yeah.
parts of their personality, judgment comes in and says, it's because you're this or that, or whatever.
Yeah. This
Uh,
this person screwed up. Right.
Um,
Right.
but it's a misunderstanding, and it's an honest one, and it's one that can be fixed and remedied by empathizing with a different person's perspective, even if it's not your perspective. Empathizing with it just long enough where you can resolve your own different perspective, because you've now held both where they've only held one.
Hmm.
Oh,
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's good. And I'll throw in one sort of curveball, and or not curveball, but just addition to what you said. Is that a lot of times they'll be frustrated and we'll tend to think, well, there's something wrong with them. For me, a lot of times a client will be frustrated and I'll think there's something wrong with me. I'd be like, well, man, I screwed up. And this is part of back to my, I was saying, don't give my past self a hard time. I mean, it's something I have to tell myself constantly because I am often very hard on myself for, and I had this today. Someone emailed and they were very upset with one of the plugins. Not very upset, but they wanted a refund. And it always just like it kills me. It just always makes me upset. I'm like, dang, what did I do? I just didn't do great. And that's it's not something wrong with me. We're trying to figure this out. We're taking this one step at a time. And as long as I don't take this as something's wrong with me or something's wrong with them, but like something is there. This is some information that the business needs to fix. I need to, this is a little bit of information, just take it as it is and do better next time. And those are back to what we were talking about earlier. Those are the higher order things. If you can fix those things, you're going to have a great business.
Speaking of plugins, sometimes I forget. I bought a plugin a few months ago as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you do with refunds? Like what's your refund process or like policy?
It depends on what the situation is. It's incredibly gracious though. I don't think there's been one person who has asked for a refund that I haven't given a refund to. Oftentimes, sometimes people will ask for a refund, and the first question I'll ask is like, well, can we help you set it up? Can we help you solve whatever the problem is? And sometimes that does it. That they're
Hmm.
like, well, this is what my issue is. And I say, oh, well, you're right. Maybe I miscommunicated this on the installation page. Here we go. Here's how you do it. And they get it installed and they're happy. And sometimes they just didn't read the features of the plugin or something. And they're just like, I want a refund. And I'm like, okay, well, I'd rather have someone have a pleasant experience with me and my brand and my business rather than have an extra $20. I mean
Yeah.
that the experience with my business is way more impactful. And I've actually had a number of people give a refund to, and they have said in an email, wow, this has been very great. Thank you for doing that. I'll be sure to be looking here again in the future.
Yeah.
And I would imagine other people think that same way, but I just try to be as gracious and open about it. I mean, I don't, if I don't feel like it's worth over saying, oh well, here are my terms and conditions, and I'm not going to give you $20 back. I'm like, well, it is what it is. Here you go.
Yeah. So is does the term say no refunds for digital products?
Um, I'm not even sure if they say no refund. I'm pretty sure I put that somewhere. Um, but yeah, I haven't been overly strict on
Yeah,
that rule.
I've had the same exact experience. And it made me say, well, maybe I should make, and I think I might have made the change somewhere that yes, we do give refunds. Because I do give refunds.
Right.
And I think since I made it more clear that like you can get a refund, I think I've given less refund. I don't give there's hardly much request for it, but I never turned
Really?
down a
Wow.
I never
Yeah.
turned down a refund request because it's like, um, okay, like you said.
Right. Right. It's like,
In
well,
in
fine.
fact,
Okay.
sometimes I would rather sometimes I'll initiate the refund request on behalf. That's my curveball on that.
Yep.
I'll initiate the refund request like, hey, I can
Y-
just give you a refund. Don't even,
I'm 100%. I've done that a number of times with clients that are being really finicky. I'm like, listen, I'm happy to give you a refund. If this isn't working for you, seriously, I'm happy to give you a refund. I won't force it on you, but you can do this. I don't want you to feel like there's pressure here. Um, and that's been a good experience for me and I think my customers too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. We might have to we do a follow-up to do more talk about this plugin stuff. Because I don't know if you've ever gotten any interest in people learning how you've done your plugin shop, but I've gotten a couple questions recently about it, and I've always kind of just not or not thought it worthwhile. I
Mm.
don't know. Just
Hmm.
figured no one wants to
Like
do
how
this.
big could that
Yeah,
market be?
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Um,
Right. I think there would be and obviously I'm biased. I think there would be a good amount of people interested. Um, and that might be a fun thing to just do a YouTube video or something on. Just sort of say, hey, here's what some people do. And then if you wanted to put a course together, I think that could get a lot of interest.
yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I mean, it's yeah, um, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's all I got. What I'm
Yeah.
working on this
Yeah.
week though is I'm working on all my SOPs finally. I'm getting that like squared up and
Oh,
out the way.
good.
well, it's never out the way, but
Good.
at least like down so that here's my school experience coming back where I never
Yeah.
like to show my work, right? Like to me,
Oh yeah.
um if I could do it in my head, like that meant like I was smart, like clearly I've got some
Uh-huh.
intelligence if I don't have to write down all of that work that everyone else is writing down. But now
Mm-hmm.
in the business owner's shoes, it's like, or at least this online thing, I have to show my work, otherwise it can't work beyond me. So um
Right.
I'm excited
Right.
about
Yeah.
making that shift because I've everything I've done for the past 8 years has been kind of, not everything, that's a lie, but as far as like the day to
A
day,
lot of, yeah.
yeah, the stuff that the drivers, live in my head.
Yeah.
All the business drivers live in my head. All the extra stuff
Right.
lives
Right.
outside of it. The things that I think aren't like important, everything I think is important is in my head. The things I think are like fruits,
Right. Right.
giveaway.
No, 100%. Yeah, I'm very much there. A lot of most of my business runs in my head. And I hired Abby, a year and a half ago, to help with support tickets. And she's been excellent and has been taking on more and more of an internal role. And I've realized kind of the same thing of like, wow, I need to get processes and procedures and stuff in place just so other people can handle this a little bit more. Because if I get hit by a bus or rather I just get burnt out with some things and I just need to take a little break, I just need someone else to be able to step in.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So you don't have that yet? You don't have like a little handbook of the Will Myers handbook of
Oh, I wish.
how to
I
do what you
wish I
do?
had a little Will Myers handbook. I do not have a Will Myers handbook. That would be really nice though. If you put yours together, I
I
will buy that and read
I
that. I would
will.
love to know.
It
Please
sounded
do.
good.
Please
It
if you
sounded good saying it about you. So I'm like, well, it gotta sound good for me too.
yeah. I would love that. The Omari handbook. That
All
sounds
right.
pretty good.
All right.
That
Well,
sounds pretty good. I feel like that's a good thing to focus on.
I will get back to work on it.
There we go. There we go.
Well, it's been fun talking with you as usual. That's all I got.
Same to
If you
you.
if you got
Same,
anything to
same to
share,
you, Omar. I really, really enjoy our conversations every time. It's been too long. It was great seeing you in person. I'm glad we got to sort of pontificate and philosophize over a podcast again.
And if any of our listeners want to improve their coding skills, or you're just curious about coding, and you identify as a curious coder, then Will's got a really cool membership for you where you can get a lot of those good things that he's gotten out of his head into a way that you can use it